More Americans voted in 2020 than any other presidential elections in 120 years. About 67% of eligible voters cast ballots this year, but that still means a third did not. That amounts to about 80 million people who stayed at home. Today, my purpose is to formulate some of the arguments associated with passing the H.R.1 for the People Act. As a citizen of the United States, I am interested in this topic. I have researched the People Act to provide you with the most accurate and up-to-date information. After today, you will have a little more information to help decide whether to support or oppose passing the H.R.1 for the People Act. I will begin with reasons why people support passing the H.R.1 for the People Act, and then cover reasons on why some people oppose the idea. There are two primary reasons some people support passing the H.R.1 for the People Act. The first reason comes from believing restoring voting rights on formerly incarcerated people. According to Vanita Gupta, former president and CEO of the Leadership Conference, in its March 2019 article, Restoring Rights for Formerly Incarcerated People, published on civilrights.org, states that H.R.1 will restore voting rights for the people with felony convictions, a necessary reputation of our nation's discriminatory and racially violent past. In other words, no matter what your background is, people will still have the right to vote, like everyone else. The second reason is making more helpful accommodations to the people by making sure that people will have a vote. According to Ellen Nelson, that previously covered campaigns in Congress and worked at the Concord Monitor newspaper in New Hampshire, where she's covered Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. On her March 3, 2021 article, House Democrats' Massive Voting Right Bill Explained, published on Vox.com, creates new national automatic voter registration that asks voters to opt out rather than opt in, ensuring more people will be signed up to vote. Required chief state elections officials to automatically register eligible unregistered citizens, in other words, creating a system where people who can vote are getting registered and signed up to vote, and those who don't know they can sign up to vote will be automatically be put in the system to have voting rights and to spread it to everyone else. With supporting reasons covered, let's look at opposing reasons. There are two primary reasons some people oppose passing the H.R.1 for the People Act. The first reason comes from believing that the H.R.1 would weaken election security. According to Sarah Swan, who is a freelance journalist based in Washington, D.C. for 2.5 years, she covered voting rights and money in politics on her June 16, 2021 article. The three main reasons conservatives oppose H.R.1, published in the fulcrum.us, states that conservatives have raised the alarm over certain provisions in the legislation that they would loosen voting rules and create incentive for fraud. In other words, H.R.1 would permit voters to designate any person to return a completed and sealed absentee ballot to an official drop-off location. Critics warn this could lead to a so-called ballot harvesting, in which partisans could go door to door and solicit votes. The second reason comes from believing that the H.R.1 Act isn't for the people, but for the politicians. According to Claudia Tenney, who was first elected to serve as a member of the United States House of Representatives, in her March 3, 2021 article, H.R.1 isn't for the people, it's for the politicians, published on the Hill.com, House Democrats are leveraging legitimate concerns about elections integrity, rush this dangerous bill through Congress. It won't make our elections safer. Instead, it will give House Democrats an advantage in future elections by eliminating nearly every institutional guardrail that preserves the sanctity of the ballot box today. In other words, H.R.1 would prevent elections officials from maintaining accurate voter lists and makes it harder for them to determine if voters are registered in multiple jurisdictions. In conclusion, the debate over the H.R.1 Act is multi-phase. Let's review what we learned today. First, we learned two reasons on some people support passing the H.R.1, and which were first reasons come from believing restoring voting rights from incarcerated people. The second reason is making more accommodations for people who could vote. Second, we learned two reasons some people oppose passing the H.R.1. First reason comes from believing the H.R.1 would weaken election security. Second reason comes from believing that the H.R.1 Act isn't for the people but for the politicians. Now you have a little more information to help you decide which side of the debate you support and whether the H.R.1 Act would make a difference for the 80 million people who stayed home.